The Los Angeles Basin has been home to the Tongva tribe for more than 8,000 years, but when we think of the Tongva, we tend to focus on those who reside on the mainland. The Southern Channel Islands were also home to members of the Tongva tribe. Located about 20 miles off the California coast, Catalina Island, or Pimu in Tongva, looks much different today than it did in prehistoric times as a result of colonization and tourism. The first Europeans to arrive were the Spanish, who gave the island the name Santa Catalina and dubbed the Tongva as the Gabrieleño tribe. Ranching and gold mining boomed on Catalina in the 19th century, extracting valuable resources and altering the natural landscape. By 1830, the indigenous population on the island had been destroyed. It is estimated that there were around 3,000 Tongva living there at the community's peak. With the growth of the City of Angels came increased tourism to the island and development attempts to attract the public, including the construction of hotels and casinos. William Wrigley Jr., of chewing gum fame, purchased the island in 1919 as a passion project, constructing the Catalina we know today. Currently, the island is under the control of the Catalina Island Conservancy, who are dedicated to restoring the environment while maintaining public recreation. But what do we know about the people who were on Catalina before all of this happened? That's where archaeology comes in. Using evidence from material culture and the environment, archaeologists can reconstruct the lifeways and habits of the prehistoric Maritime Tongva. The Maritime Tongva lived in village communities throughout the island, in groups numbering between 50 and 100 people. They were part of an extensive trade network with the mainland and other Channel Islands, exchanging valuable commodities such as soapstone bowls for fur and other goods. As for food, the Tongva carefully managed their supplies and natural resources, working communally and making the most of what they had available. Terrestrial food resources for the Tongva were scarce due to the arid landscape of the environment. Unlike the Catalina Island fox, most of the terrestrial life seen on Catalina today is not native to the island. For example, in 1924, a herd of 14 bison were brought to Catalina as set dressing for a film. As an alternative to hunting, the Tongva on Catalina turned to the abundance of the ocean for a more accessible source of protein, where a majority of their sustenance came from shellfish. Understanding the diet of the Maritime Tongva is important to archaeologists, as it provides insight into how the Tongva managed their resources and adapted to changes in the environment. For my project, I looked at changes in shellfish frequency to better understand the collection strategies that the Maritime Tongva used to sustain their diet and the effect of their foraging habits on the availability of marine resources. One important excavation site on Catalina is located on the western shore of the island, known as Little Harbor.
Hello.
This is Dr. Mark Robb, former director of state archaeology at CSU Northridge. In 1991, Dr. Robb led an excavation at the site to research changes in marine temperature. The samples for my project are part of the collected material that had not been analyzed, which have been stored in the collections of the Fowler Museum for over 30 years.
From an archaeological point of view, this is really quite an extraordinary place.
Little Harbor is a bay surrounded by village sites that date to around 3000 BC. As a natural landing place for canoes with a wide variety of marine resources, Little Harbor was an important locale for inter-island communications. Although it is now a campground, the high socioeconomic activity at the site led to a dense shell midden that accumulated over a 300-year time span. This midden is used by archaeologists to track changes in the dietary behavior of the Tongva that resided there.
This very dark material that you see on the ground here next to me is called midden.
A midden is a prehistoric landfill found in coastal indigenous cultures around the world. These middens were used as a place to consolidate food residue in one area, rather than have debris littered around the settlement. The density of the midden reflects intensive gathering habits of marine resources. Clement Megan, the first archaeologist to excavate Little Harbor, described the site as an exploitation of the environment on a scale seldom seen in shell midden remains in California. Collection strategies in foraging societies fluctuate based on resource availability and changes in the environment. When primary food staples become limited, foragers must adapt by expanding their diet to other resources in order to sustain the nutritional needs of the community. Behavioral models suggest that foragers aim to maximize their harvest and must weigh the costs and benefits of the energy needed to gather certain food items. To analyze changes in the dietary habits seen at Little Harbor, I sorted 40 kilograms of shells over the course of a year. I organized the shells by species and then compared their quantity and weight between the different depth levels of the midden. I specifically focused on abalone, mussel, and the wavy-topped turban snail, since they were the most abundant in the sorted data. Abalone was the primary marine resource of the Maritime Tongva. They were often pried off of rocks with tools made from stone or mammal bone. 3 species were present in the midden data. Black abalone, which reside in shallower waters, are the easiest to collect. Green abalone and corrugated abalone, on the other hand, reside in deeper waters and require diving to be accessed. California mussel are attached to rocks along the shore and would be harvested in large batches. While this is a more efficient means of collection, the presence of smaller specimens ends up increasing their processing time. Wavy-top snail varies in ocean depth, which could require diving at times. They may have been collected opportunistically during other shellfishing activities or independently. The differing ocean depths of these species affect the Tongva's collection strategies based on the energy required to efficiently gather them. Mussel and wavy-top were a secondary food resource, and when compared to the frequency of abalone, reveal how the Maritime Tongva adapted to fulfill their dietary needs. This graph shows changes in the meat weight of the 5 shellfish species that I identified. Black abalone stays consistent throughout the midden because of its reliability along the shore. Corrugated abalone and green abalone both show a sharp decline over time. Their pattern is similar due to the deeper ocean habitat that they reside in. In total, we can see that when abalone yield is at its peak, there are lesser amounts of mussel and wavy-top. The eventual decline in abalone then coincides with the increase of mussel and wavy-top as a way to supplement the loss of their primary resource. These results indicate that the Tongva readily exploited a variety of food resources when confronted with changes in availability. When sustaining a large community, productivity and the maximization of resources is key. The trends seen in the midden data at Little Harbor show that the subsistence strategies of the Maritime Tongva adhered to these models. Their efforts were undoubtedly successful, given the extent of the midden site, which in total is about the size of a football field. Dr. Robb summarizes this idea quite well.
The fact that there is such an extensive prehistoric occupation of this island is a testimony to the ingenuity of these people.
It is important to elevate and enrich indigenous culture due to the historic erasure and trauma the community has faced for centuries. Prehistoric lifeways help us understand the development of ecological trends over time, including changes in the environment, resource availability, and the human impact on these variables. With the help of archaeological studies, we can learn more about the prehistoric Tongva both on and off the mainland, allowing for the recuperation of indigenous history.